Hi, I'm standing here with Dr. Harvey of the University of Birmingham in England, and he's an expert on industrial relations and particularly those of the airline industry, which I also am interested in. In the last couple of years, we've seen here in Scandinavia that the airline industry is changing and changing quite dramatically. How would you describe that change and the consequences?
Well, certainly as a result primarily of liberalization, but more recently as a result of the business models of several of the leading low fares airlines. I believe this has put considerable pressure on others in the industry in order to compete, particularly on costs, which has led to a change not only in low fares airlines operating strategy, but those of the legacy carriers. So the change in the industry, if we take the Scandinavian context, we are seeing radical changes both with Scandinavian Air Services as well as Norwegian, or the Norwegian group as it's become.
Okay, but this has been sort of the network airline versus the low-cost airline has been there for a long time, and you've seen competitors, competing on sort of desperate low costs like Ryanair, and then the people that are sort of more into utilizing their assets better, like or having better labor relations, like Norwegian perhaps used to be. Is this changing now?
Certainly, I think what is from an IR perspective, what is quite worrying is an airline like Norwegian that has up until certainly 2010, 11, even 12, had fantastic labour relations with its staff, and as a result of changes, albeit the pressures from other airlines, pressures to compete, the airline has pursued a model of employment relations now, which has been met with considerable discontent from staff and considerable conflict. The policies that the airline has introduced, which one might argue is largely the result of competitive pressures in the industry, has led to a situation where staff are suffering, are paying the penalty for whatever it might be, competitive pressures or strategic choice on the part of management.
Okay, but isn't this, if you're in top management shoes and you had to compete and you had to survive, aren't you sort of forced to go in that direction? And isn't very much of this a result of, at least for the countries up here in Scandinavia, living in a sort of peaceful little bubble, with very good economies, whereas, lots of people, particularly in the south of Europe, are very happy, or at least willing to work for the wages that are being offered.
Just to take that apart, I think that there are certainly pressures facing airlines, and there's certainly pressures facing airlines like Norwegian. What I would disagree with is the justification of what the airline has implemented by way of employment policies being a necessity, and certainly in the sense that they are beneficial to staff. Essentially what the airline is doing is leading to social dumping, using staff from lower wage economies, lower wage contexts in order to reduce its labour costs, or even use as a threat with existing staff to reduce their costs. So whereas I understand from a sort of managerial perspective the pressures being faced, and certainly from the likes of the ultra low fares airlines, a term that's come into common parlance now, the Wizz Airs, the Ryanairs, puts incredible pressure, creates like a vortex in the sense that it drags other airlines down to do similar things. The problem I have is some of the changes that have been implemented, and particularly the Norwegian Air International strategy, is resulting in social dumping. So this is a major problem that I don't think is inevitable.